Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 84, and this is Annie and the Magician, part 10. I had a lot of fun writing this. Been a very busy week, so actually most of it was written in the last 24 hours, but I think it went really well, and I noticed that the numbers of downloads have gone up a bit, so I appreciate that, and if you have been putting us out on any social media, I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. And here we go. Quereri soon became deathly ill. He was too weak to do anything but stay in bed. He would ask Anastasia to do various small tasks for him, but otherwise was bedridden. Anastasia was distraught. Quereri was the first person who had ever shown her real kindness, the first one to think of her as anything other than a worker. But she could do nothing other than continue on. She kept learning everything she could and mentally prepared for what would have to be done when her master died. She decided to take a risk. After making sure her master was as comfortable as possible and had food and drink at hand, and that May would not come for hours, she put on her ether coat and a hooded cloak and applied the stranger ether, which would prevent anyone who didn't already know her seeing her as she actually looked. Then she left the castle. She had some idea of where to go. There was a meadow surrounded by woods nearby, and she went for it. Less than an hour, and she had what she needed. Some things you learn working in a kitchen, and that includes the local flora and fauna. She knew where to look and what to look for. She went back and set to work, putting one of her ethers in a finishing machine and starting to bubble the ingredients through it. She knew the recipe well, at least by reading, and it would take over a day before it would be finished. She hoped Quereri could hold on that long. The hours came and went, and May brought the evening meal without comment. When Anastasia brought the meal to Quereri, he asked her, without opening his eyes, "Are you working on making an ether?" "Yes, master. It was going to be a surprise." Which one?" Anastasia knew Quereri knew all of his recipes so well that he could have told for himself if he still had the strength to even walk to the next room. But at least he was aware enough to know what was going on, at least when the door had opened. "The hiding ether, master. I think it is going well. I have some ideas of where to hide your equipment, but the best ones all involve the ether lasting more than a day, and I cannot be sure that if I used yours it would do so. The water pitcher lasted only a bit more than half a day." "Your first ether without any supervision from me, then. Well done." "It's not done yet, master. I don't know if it will work. I believe in you." "Thank you, master. Let me rest and see to your recipe." She did so. The recipe went well, and so did Quereri, who was still deathly ill, but at least no worse than when they spoke. "Perhaps you're going to get better, master," she said when she helped him back to his bed after relieving himself. "We will see," was all he said before lying down and closing his eyes. "I will have the recipe done in just a moment," Anastasia said, but Quereri did not reply. The ether, cooled to a usable temperature, looked in color and clarity exactly like her master's, just a hint of blue, but otherwise clear as a mountain stream. "Master, it is finished," Anastasia said, opening his bedroom door. "I want to test it for you here." He did not reply, and Anastasia put the ether down on the bedside table, along with the water pitcher she was planning on using as a test object. "Are you okay, master?" Anastasia asked. "How can I help?" "No help can be given, apprentice," Quereri said without opening his eyes. "Test your ether." He opened his eyes and turned his head slightly. Anastasia stood back and took up the ether and applied it to the pitcher. "It is vanished," he said. "Well done." "Come closer. Speaking aloud is difficult." She knelt by his head. He whispered to her. "You are all I could wish for in an apprentice, diligent, intelligent, and attentive to details. I cannot truly teach you more magic, though my recipes are yours, and when you have mastered them, it makes me glad to think you will finish my healing ether and go on to make other ethers all your own. But if there is one lesson I would like to give still, it is this, that your power is not your magic. It is your mind. Even without a single ether, you have the wit to see yourself through any trouble. Magic is simply a very useful tool. It is not your real power. Your power is your mind. Do you understand?" My power is my mind, Anastasia repeated. Good. Now let me sleep, Query said. Query died that very night. In the morning, she went to check on him, but he was no longer there. His body was cold. Anastasia went to work. She knew where Query's gold was hidden, but it would stay hidden without her aid. Her first priority was the ethering equipment. She packed it into the 2 trunks she had available. They, plus some clothing and other essentials, all went into the trunks. A special pouch held Query's letters of introduction and his recipes and other writings. This, after a lot of deliberation, included her ethering coat. She instead put on her old kitchen clothes. She used the hiding ether on the trunks. Though she couldn't tell any difference, she felt confident that it had worked. She pulled the trunks outside and into the far corner of the room that included Query's door, the ladder up to the roof, and the stairs down the tower. There was no reason for people to be in that corner. She decided it was time for a test. She went to Willem Frank, House Chief Leon's assistant. He looked up at her from his desk as she approached the open waiting area. Annie? Yes, sir, she said, not correcting him. My master Query has died. Oh, dear. I will alert the proper people. Please return to his room. We will be with you shortly. Anastasia returned and decided to put some of the items that had not been packed, including an entire extra set of ethering equipment that didn't fit in the trunks, onto the various tables. She did so quickly. This decision came when she entered the room and realized it looked like someone had ransacked the place. Within a few minutes, Frank, Leon, and another man, to whom she had not been introduced, all entered Query's room without knocking. A few others were outside. None mentioned the trunks, which Anastasia took as a sign that no one could see them. After a moment of looking around, they strode off to his bedroom. She approached the bedroom door. The 3 men, hovering over Query's body, were talking amongst themselves. Frank straightened up and looked at Anastasia. We had word that he was ill. Yes, sir, for quite a few days now. Why did he not seek treatment from the castle's doctor? He waved his hand at the man whom Anastasia did not know. Pride, I suppose, Anastasia said. He's a magician. He could do anything. The king will be needing a new magician, then. I don't suppose you are advanced enough to take that post on? It wasn't really a question. No, sir. In fact, I was hoping I could return to the kitchens. Yes, well, that would make sense. Frank turned away from her and started talking among the 3 men again. Anastasia retreated. Soon they left the bedroom and went into the main room. But there were more noises outside, easily heard through the open doorway. Some more people were approaching. They soon entered the room. Anastasia saw it was King Leopold, some of his men, and, with a thrill of hate, Cupigula. He wore a sneer that she understood to be triumph. Still, she curtsied and kept her head low, as she knew would be expected. My magician, dead, Leopold said, striding into the bedroom and looking at Query's corpse. And a damn fine one he was. I don't suppose I can get you to come all the way from Gardmore, Cupigula? He asked, but a grin gave the game away. He knew that Cupigula was, if anything, more powerful and wealthy than he, and would never serve him. I'm afraid not, Cupigula replied. Though I have some fine apprentices who are nearing mastery, I can send 1 or 2 your way, and see if they will serve you, your majesty. Fine, fine, Leopold said. His eyes looked at Anastasia, then slid right off. Send for the undertaker, then. And Leon, have someone look through Query's things for a will. Frank, surely. Frank possibly beamed with pride and bowed deeply in acknowledgement. Yes, your majesty, Leon said. Query's will was in fact in that room, on Anastasia's person, in the one pocket she had sewn into the interior of her shift. It was the one document she hadn't put in the trunks, but she wasn't about to bring it out in front of her Cupigula. She didn't know what sort of trickery he might be able to inflict if he saw it. Query had put several ethers on it, which presumably prevented it from being altered or possibly damaged, but she wasn't aware of their full capabilities, and Cupigula might not have to change the will. He might simply charm the king or Leon, or both. She didn't know what ethers Cupigula had access to, and each one was a possible weapon against her. King Leopold swept out of the room, followed by Cupigula, then all of their men. Leon and Frank were the last to leave. Frank turned to her. Off to the kitchens, then, Annie. Annie nodded and waited until they left. Then she locked the door to Query's rooms, and it felt very much like she was locking away part of her life, or coming to wakefulness after a long and difficult dream. But that moment passed. She was no longer Annie, ever, even if Frank and everyone else in the castle called her that for the rest of her life. She would remain Anastasia. And that's the episode for this week. I'm looking forward to writing the next bit, and and I hope you enjoyed it. So if you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2019, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved.